Yo. What's going on, man? Today is March the 10th, 2023. It's your boy Chris, and this is the Cash It with Chris NBA betting show slash podcast presented to you guys as always by the Basketball Forever Podcast Network. Where we try to get ahead of the lines, man. I do the morning show for you guys, to hold myself accountable as well, to try to make sure I'm getting the best of the number because numbers do move, and we saw that yesterday with the Portland and with the Detroit and the Charlotte game yesterday. We saw that total drop throughout the day, but if you jumped in early, then you got the best of the number at 226 and a half, maybe even 227 and a half, depending on where you are what book you placed it on. But you always want to get the best of the number. I talk about that all the time. As you guys join, man, I appreciate it. If you not even not appreciate it, but if you guys are enjoying the content, we've been cashing on the morning show. We've been giving out a lot of bangers on the morning show. I like doing the morning show to, kind of get ahead of, the thought process of everyone else. And to be original with my thoughts, also to get the best of the line as well. So consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the content if you guys haven't already. Also, check out the podcast. I've linked the podcast, which is the same thing that you're hearing now. If you're watching if watching on YouTube, I've linked the podcast below as well. So it's always going to be in the description for people who do want to leave a 5-star review. And I appreciate that. It goes a long way. Appreciate you guys immensely for that. Let's talk about a recap real quick and then get into a couple of looks that I'm looking at for today. So excuse me. So we hit on the Charlotte and Detroit under the 226 and a half. It was a really sweaty bet. Started off extremely low scoring. I think Detroit only scored 50 points in the first half, and then Charlotte kind of let up off the gas in the second half just a tad bit. Both teams went over 30 in the third quarter, which I didn't anticipate, but it was kind of due for some positive regression there. They were playing extremely slow throughout the game, and then they had a fourth quarter that was 20-20, I think. So we barely went under, but we did go under, and that's the benefit of, like I said, getting the best of the numbers. So under 226 and a half cash. Also went back and talked about this, added this throughout the day, and gave it out yesterday on the Crispy Cap and NBA show. Detroit the team total to go under the 110. I talked about Charlotte being the best defensive team post All-Star break. Without LaMelo, their pace also slows down. Detroit without a lot of their guys. Shout out to people who joined me yesterday. And I talked about, I didn't make an official play, but Killian Hayes to go under his 19 and a half points, rebounds, and assists yesterday. Dude finished with 1 point, like a couple rebounds, like 2 assists or something. So that was another cash, but I didn't even put that on the screen. But, I told you, unders correlate with full games to go under as well. So shout out to Mr. Killian Hayes, man. Nothing against him, just saw a spot. Nah, I like to attack it yesterday. So, and then in the Knicks first half, Knicks came out. I should say the Kings came out with a lot of energy. I think they were up for the fight yesterday. And kind of dominated the Knicks early in that game. Knicks couldn't buy a shot, which I thought was pretty surprising. The Kings actually playing defense. Knicks picked it up in the third quarter, but it wasn't enough. For the full game, and they didn't cover the full half. So shout out to the Kings, man. Cast the trifecta spot yesterday. So that was the only loss yesterday. Let's get into the slate for today. Let's talk about the games for today. And I actually didn't even get a chance to make all my banners like I wanted to. So I'm going to let me create one really quickly. I want just a couple games I want to talk about that I do want to have a banner for. So the first game I want to talk about is the Cleveland and Miami game. And it looks like Cleveland is 1.5 point favorites again, which is similar to the line that we just saw. The Miami Heat were home dogs in that game. These two teams did just play against each other as well. We get a total that opened a little bit higher. The total in this one is 214. I think the total in the last one was like 212 and a half, and it got bet up to like 215 or something similar. Don't quote me on that, but it got bet up to about 215. So that this game is interesting, man. I think Cleveland, Miami is one of the worst teams in the NBA at scoring the ball. They have an effective field goal percentage. They're bottom 5 in effective field goal percentages. And Cleveland plays really well. Shout out to my guy Josh, Punt School. I watched this podcast. Definitely check out my guy Josh's podcast at Punt School on Twitter. and he talked about this game, talked about the last game, and he talked about how Cleveland plays really, really well against teams that just can't score the ball. And Miami's going to continue to struggle to score the ball. They turned the ball over a lot of times in the last game. I anticipate the same thing. And then for this game, not that Miami won't try to come back out with something. To me, it just kind of feels like Cleveland is the better team and they're seizing the moment right now. So one thing I looked at for this game is I looked at let's see, let me get my notes up really, really quickly. I looked at teams that were road favorites and won, and now they're playing against that's the same team that they just played against is the next team that they're playing against. Those teams are 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, winning by average of 11 points. It's only happened a couple times where you start as a road favorite and you win, and then you open as a road favorite as well against the same team. So 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. They're also 4-0 to the over. I'm not 100% sure that this game goes over. Uh, and this trend, I think, it's a small trend. Like, it's only 4 games throughout the whole season that this has actually happened. But I do feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers are the better team in this game, right? So happened against the Hawks and the Pistons earlier this season, the Celtics and the Hornets. When they played on a back-to-back, it was throughout the weekend. I remember that one earlier this season back in January. Then it happened with the Kings and the Rockets, the Kings and the Thunder, and the Hawks and the Wizards also fit this system as well, because the Hawks and the Wizards also played today. And I won't talk about that game right now, but the Hawks and the Wizards also fit this system because the Hawks entered what was that, Wednesday night as road favorites, and now they're road favorites again as well. So those teams that, I'll say it again, those teams that were road favorites in the last game playing against the same opponent, and they opened as a road favorite again, they are 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. I think this is another Cleveland spot. If I'm playing this game, I'm laying the 1.5 points with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are the much better team in my estimation. I'm not high on Miami at all. The total in this one, is, like I said, I could see this one actually going under, even though the trend that I just kind of gave you guys points towards the over. If I'm playing an over, I'm taking the Cleveland Cavaliers team total to go over. But I don't want the Miami Heat team total to go over at all. This team really struggles to score the ball. They can be extremely one-dimensional at times. So if I'm playing that game, I'm laying the 1.5 points with the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road as a favorite. They have been inconsistent, but I do feel like it's a team that they should beat again. And I think it's kind of telling with the line opening at 1. Another play in this game that I'm really, really looking hard into is Jimmy Butler. So I watched the post-game interview, and Jimmy said that they asked him about the standings, and he said, I don't really pay attention to the standings. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, where we are right now, we're in the play-in game or something like that. He was like, and they were like, yeah. He was like, well, I guess we need to win, and I guess we need to make sure we win. The problem with the Heat is that they're on the first leg of a back-to-back. They do play tomorrow, and they've struggled in that spot throughout the season. I think they were, when I capped the game the other day, one of the reasons that made me want to look towards the Cleveland Cavaliers was that the Heat, I think, are something like 2-7. They may be 2-8 now, playing on the first leg of a back-to-back. I didn't look at that to cap this game, but I want to say that the Heat are. Let me just check really, really quickly just to make sure. So Heat. But yeah, I was right. The Heat are 2-8 against the spread, losing by an average of 4 points. They're also 7-3 to the under in those spots as well. Even though the last 2 have gone over, they failed to cover their last. Let's see, this is 10 games. They failed to cover their last 7 times in this spot. So even more of a reason for me to like the Cleveland Cavaliers today. But getting back to what I was saying, Mr. Jimmy Butler, I think, is absolutely in play for today. In home games, one of the few things I looked at was at home games where the total is 216 or lower, and we see that with a total of 215, 214. I wanted to see how Jimmy played in those totals, in those games where it's a low total, because to me it indicates that the team that they're playing against is a really, really good defensive team. So Jimmy may have to do more. Jimmy's actually 5-8 to the over to his points and rebounds number, which is 27.5. I saw that minus 122 last night. He's 5-8 to the over in that spot. And in 3 home games as a dog this season, They've only been home dogs 3 times. One of those times being on Wednesday. He's actually 2-3 to the over on this number as well. The game that he didn't go over was actually one of the first games of the season against the Boston Celtics during opening week. Jimmy's also coming off a game of 28 points and 5 rebounds versus the same Cavaliers team. And said in the post game interview that, like I talked about, he really, they really need to win this game. I think I think he takes it upon himself. He is one of the guys on the Heat team that can, get his own shot and get to the free throw line. So if I'm playing anything, especially with a low total, I can see him going over his rebounds as well. I'm playing Jimmy Butler over 27.5 points plus rebounds as a prop in this game. But I do like the Cleveland Cavaliers on the side. So kind of 2 plays in one. I'm looking for Jimmy Butler to have a big game, but not a lot of the other players on the team. So that's how I kind of see that game. Moving along, the Atlanta Hawks and the Washington Wizards game is the next one I want to touch on really briefly. So Atlanta, Washington. Total in this game is Atlanta is laying 1.5 points this time. I know that they opened as 3-point favorites in the last game. And the spread's moving in their direction because they actually were laying 1, and it's actually moving up to 1.5. The total in this one is open at 238. We asked on the total the other day. It opened at 234.5, and we took the over. Now they open this one at 238. I'm not 100% sure that this one goes over, even though, like I just said, they fit the same trend that I just kind of gave you guys. You look at previous road favorites who won, and then they're playing against the same team. Those games are 4-0 to the over in the next matchup. However, to me, this kind of feels like a game that goes under. So you get Atlanta on the first leg of a back-to-back. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah. Atlanta flies home tonight after the game, and they get the Boston Celtics tomorrow. So to me, it kind of feels like they, maybe they go all out and win tonight and understand they probably don't have a chance to beat the Boston Celtics on the second leg of a back-to-back tomorrow. But it kind of feels like, to me, this is what I think about this game. I think we wait for the total to get bet up because the last one got bet up. And I think we take the under then. I am kind of surprised to not see a lot of money come in on the over. 238 is a lot, right? And this game did score 238 points, but it was a kind of a sweat. So you look at one thing I looked at was this Wizards team, 6-1 to the under when they're revenging same season losses this season, and they're playing at home. So you take that in conjunction with the, this being a conference game, first leg of a back-to-back. And I talked about this yesterday when I talked about the Brooklyn and Milwaukee game to go under. And that game did go under last night, under the 233, under the 232.5. But you look at these road games for these teams that are playing in conference games, and they're playing on the first leg of a back-to-back. They after the All-Star break, those games are going under at a really, really high rate. So if I'm playing this game, I think I'm playing the under the 238, but it's not anything that I've played yet. I think you wait until the total gets bet up because it does feel like to me that the total will get bet up. If I see a 240, I'm taking the under for the Atlanta and the Washington game. Those are my thoughts on that game. Also, really like Clint Capella in this spot. If you watch the Atlanta Hawks and the Washington Wizards play on Wednesday night, you see that Atlanta runs a lot of pick and roll coverage. Clint Capella points is at 11.5. And since Quinn Snyder's gotten there, they've run a lot more pick and roll. It's almost like Quinn Snyder uses Clint Capella the same way that Quinn Snyder used Rudy Gobert when he was in Utah. It's a lot of pick and roll between Trae Young and Clint Capella, between DeJounte Murray and Clint Capella, almost like Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert, almost like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, even though Donovan Mitchell never passed the ball to Rudy Gobert. That's besides the point. My point is I like Clint Capella points. Also like this game to go under, but I'm not playing that 238. If it touches 240, if it gets bet up, then I will be looking at the under in this spot. Next game up I want to touch on just a tad bit is the Portland Trailblazers and the Philadelphia 76ers. And we see that this line opened at 8.5 in favor of the home team, which is the Philadelphia 76ers. We also see this total open at 229.5. So 229.5 total. Philly coming back home after, an impressive road stint if you take away the game against the the Dallas Mavericks, where they were playing on the second leg of a back-to-back 2 Thursdays ago in that spot. This team is impressive. They really played well. They got a win against the Indiana Pacers, even though they didn't play a lot of defense in that game just a few games ago. They also got a win before that game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Held Minnesota, I think, 27 points under their team total. So Philly's balling right now. And do I want to lay 9 points with them, 8.5 points at home? Portland coming off a loss on the other side as well. Portland has struggled as post All-Star break. This team has struggled against good competition, but they've actually been playing really well against teams that don't have a good record. So one of the things I looked at was the Trailblazers. I want to pull this up real quick. The Trailblazers as after the All-Star break, and their opponent win percentage is less than 50. Or I'm sorry, is actually opponent win percentage is greater than or equal to 50. They got a couple wins. They beat they squeaked out a win against the Orlando Magic the other day. And who was the other team? They played the Detroit Pistons. But they've actually struggled when they've been on the road against really good teams. They played the Kings and lost that game 133 to 116. I think that was the game without Jeremy Grant, without Damian Lillard because of the snowstorm where they got to Sacramento late and they rested. That was right after the All-Star break. But they also lost to the Wizards, lost 123 to 1. I'm sorry, the Warriors, 123 to 105. And then they go to Boston, they get smacked up pretty handily as well, 115 to 93. So should they come back out with something? Absolutely, they should. They are 0-3 straight up and against the spread, losing by an average of 17 points per game. But it could be a letdown spot for the 76ers. This will be their first game after, I think, a 5-game road trip. So not a spot you really want to back the Sixers in. So what I did was I kind of pivoted. To a player prop in this game. The Portland Trail Blazers have been playing with a low pace. They're not the fastest paced team in the league, but to me, this number feels obtainable. It's James Harden. I'm looking at his assists. Over 10.5. I think I saw that minus 122 last night. And I did play it. I played it for a half unit. I'm not super big on props, but to me, it feels like a game James Harden should absolutely dominate. You look at Harden, 14 assists earlier this season against the Portland Trail Blazers in Portland. Also, his last 2 games last season, he had last 2 times that he played this team, he had 17 assists and 17 assists in both of those 2 matchups. He's also coming off a 20 assist game against the Indiana Pacers, a 10 assist game against the Milwaukee Bucks, and a 13 assist game against the Dallas Mavericks. So in his last 3 games this season, he's averaging 15 assists on 23.5 potential assists. Last 3 games against the Portland Trail Blazers, who he'll be facing today, 14 assists, 17 assists, and 17 assists. In those 3 games, like I said, Harden the most recent 3 games, he's averaging 15 assists on 23.5 potential assists. And also, I looked at Portland. They're allowing 28 assists per game, which ranks the 3rd most since the All-Star break to just the teams in general. Since the All-Star break, Jaden Ivey's had 13 already, which is kind of crazy. Trae Young has had 11 assists, and Sabonis has had double-digit assists. He had 10 already as well. So Harden know how to ball in his hand. We know how that goes. And if I'm looking at this game, I'm playing James Harden to go over his 10.5 assists at minus 122. That line probably goes up. Couldn't talk anybody off just playing the plus money and taking it at 12 as well. I think if James Harden gets 11 assists, he'll probably get 12 assists in this one as well. So those would be the best bets for today. So what just in review, what I talked about, Cleveland Cavaliers minus the 1.5. I gave you guys my analysis around that. Previous road favorites that win the game, and then they open up as a road favorite as well. They are 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, winning by average of about 8 or 9 points. And then so Cavs minus the 1. I talked about Jimmy Butler to still have a big game, although I don't think that they win the game. Jimmy Butler over 27.5 points plus rebounds. And the last one that I didn't really touch on too much is the Toronto and the Lakers game. I'll talk about that game a little bit more, but I do have a strong lean towards the under. Raptors 5-3 to the under post All-Star break. But one of those unders actually coming, one of the overs actually coming in overtime. Even with the overtime game, their totals are going to averaging about 214 points. Toronto's just really struggled to score the ball. The Lakers are coming off a really good win against the Grizzlies on Tuesday. So, 2 days rest for them. The Lakers are also 6-0 to the under post All-Star break when they're not playing on the second leg of a back-to-back. And those games are averaging about 221 points. They do get D'Angelo Russell back, who could, kind of mess up the defense a little bit for the Lakers. He's not a defensive-minded point guard. He could also be a little rusty. Not sure how Coach Ham's going to manage his minutes today with him not playing a game in about 2 weeks. So leaning towards the under. Didn't play it officially yet, but I'm only looking towards the under. Open at 224.5. It's down to 224. So a little extra that I that I wanted to add for you guys as well. But these, I'm putting my official plays at the bottom for you guys. So I actually got 2 props in a side today. No totals quite yet, but I probably will end up adding a total as well. You guys can see him strolling at the bottom. I'm on the Cavs minus the 1.5. Jimmy Butler over 27.5 points plus rebounds, and Harden over 10.5 assists are the best bets for today. I'll take the comments. I always like to make sure I read the comments. I'll look at the comments offline just because I am at the 20-minute mark. But I appreciate you guys tapping in with me as always, man. Extremely, extremely grateful for everybody who checks out the pod all the time. Best of luck to you guys today. I hope that you guys cash all your tickets. Also, be sure to hit the like button for me if you guys are enjoying the content, especially if you guys been cashing with me, because we've been killing on the morning show. The plays that I've been having early. So hit the like button for me, comment, leave your best bet as well, and then subscribe to the shows if you guys haven't. Also, check out the podcast for me. The link is in the description if you guys are watching on Twitter. I'm sorry, if you guys are watching on YouTube. So back at 5:30 as always for the Crispy Captain NBA show. Best of luck to you guys on all your bets for today. I'm out.